want to say a few words about Bible translation. Sometimes I think people have unusual expectations or unrealistic expectations about Bible translation. The truth is, translation is very, very hard. Translation is not code breaking. Language doesn't work the same across cultures. I mean, I think some people have this vision of translation being, you know, A equals B, and wherever you find A, you put in B, and then boom, you've got a translation. The reality is, translation is always approximation. And there are a number of things that get in the way of a translation. When the words don't exactly correspond the same way, language doesn't work the same way across culture. Sometimes you have idiomatic uses of language. We have our own idioms in English. You had skeletons in your closet, or it's raining cats and dogs, or I woke up on the wrong side of the bed. A non-English speaker could know all of the words and yet not know exactly what's being conveyed. Now, in the case of Bible translation, there's really two different philosophies of Bible translation. The first is formal correspondence, and the second is dynamic equivalence. Formal correspondence might be the one that most of you are the most familiar with. It's usually thought of as the literal translation. My definition for formal correspondence, I like to call it formal correspondence because it helps me remember what it means, is when the form of the translation corresponds as closely as possible to the original. So that's why it's called formal correspondence. This is often thought of as the literal translation. So those translations that try to go one for one in meaning, that is a formal correspondence translation. The strengths are you can get a very good sense of the structure of the original language. Many of the formal correspondence translations try to use the same word to translate the same Hebrew or the same Greek word so that you can have that sense of meaning across time. Unfortunately, translations can often be very stilted. They can be very awkward. Grammar is very different across languages, and it's hard to shape one language like another. In Hebrew, the first word in a sentence is usually the verb. But we don't really do that much in English. And then we have the first noun after the verb is the subject, and the next noun after that is very often the object. It's hard to make an English sentence meet that same requirements. It also requires more advanced reading levels. A lot of unfamiliar vocabulary and more advanced ideas as far as vocabulary is concerned could lead to higher reading levels. The other end of the spectrum from the literal translation is the dynamic equivalence theory. Dynamic equivalence was started by a man by the name of Eugene Nida, who just died a couple of years ago. His belief was that you wanted the effect of the translation to be the same on the new reader as the original text had on the original reader. So that original reader, when he's reading the text, isn't going to be thinking of words like sanctification or justification or propitiation or expiation. And so you're wanting to translate the text in a way that conveys the meaning that first person experienced. And sometimes this is thought of as translating the meaning versus translating the words. You get a very readable translation when you do this. It results in very lower, that's very often children's Bibles are used in this way. Much lower reading levels, much easier reading levels. Unfortunately, you can run the risk of too much paraphrase. It is asking the translator to do a great deal of work culturally to deduce exactly what was meant by certain words and certain phrases as they're translated. So those are the two main philosophies of translation that we're looking at.